Welcome back to Regional Championship 9 here in Melbourne. I am Thomas Anderson. It's been an absolute roller coaster, 7 rounds so far. It's been a thrill to cover all of these different decks and really exciting metagame development throughout the day with some amazing plays by even more amazing players. And with me this whole time has been Kira Tereski, my standard expert. How is this unfolding before us? It feels like it's been an absolute surprise of a day.
It's been an amazing day, to say the least. I have really been enjoying watching. You know what the deck to beat was Is It Prowess, and we've actually seen that really come through.
Yeah, it's definitely not fallen flat on its face, but compared to how dominant people clearly expected it to be, it has faced some real adversity. This is a deck that you were telling me earlier has only seemed to go from strength to strength to strength. It's almost like the number of players registering it is just everyone who can get their hands on the cards. But today we might have seen a little bit of pushback from the metagame.
It's been hedging a little bit, but guess what? We don't even have that at the feature match table, so let's head on down and see what we've got for round 7.
Yeah, the players are ready.
Here at the feature match today, for round 7, we have Aiden Gordon on Azorius Omniscience and Jennifer Rose Holloway on Dimir Midrange. And this is a pairing we've not seen Dimir Midrange yet today. And to be honest with you, Thomas, I have no idea what to expect in this matchup.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because Azorius Omniscience is definitely a blue-white deck, but it's not a true control deck in terms of the volume of interaction. A lot of slots are devoted to cantripping and otherwise, getting through your deck with velocity to find the combo pieces, put the Omniscience in the bin, and then obviously you can win at your leisure. We've seen this deck a couple of times on stream today, and most of them seem to follow a pretty similar configuration. But blue-black mid-range, it's a deck that's been, I want to say, prominent for longer, and there's more options, more flex slots available. Jennifer's list has clearly been successful enough to get her this deep into the day with $15,000 and a Worlds invite on the line. But this matchup, we were just looking at the interaction before, might be a struggle, especially in game 1.
Looks like both players here also taking a mulligan for this game 1 here of round 7. So not exactly where I'd really want to be if I was either player. Jennifer's list here as well, looking really classic Dimir midrange. I'm having a look at the list and I don't see a single card in here from Tarkir Dragonstorm.
I mean, maybe the set just doesn't have anything for you, right? You sort of maybe look at the Sultai cards and go, no, that's not for me. I really want to be 2-color, and I already have so many good spells. Maybe I just don't need any new ones. Or perhaps you just didn't have time to review your deck list and you were happy with the performance last time you took it out. But either way, Jennifer is now at 5-1 at the pointy end of the day, so really close to making it into our finals tomorrow, and it must be an exciting, if nerve-wracking time on the main stage. What would you be mulliganing for in the Dimir seat? Because Aiden Gordon at least has a really specific game plan to look for, but the mid-range deck's kind of loose.
Now, what's really interesting with some of the tools that Jennifer Rose has here in her deck list, things like Dreams of Steel and Oil and Duress, you kind of don't want your opponent to discard Omniscience because that's kind of their whole game plan. Dreams of Steel and Oil as well, getting around that a little bit with the exile effect. But Duress as well, if you Duress them, you kind of don't want them to, you don't want to choose the Omniscience to go in the bin.
It's interesting because if there is some thought to it, right? Is if you get Duress, especially very early in the game, turn 1 Duress, if you discard Omniscience, you are leaving yourself open to, well, what if I don't draw the Awakening quickly? Or what if I draw the Awakening quickly and then that gets Duressed? But you're right, it's a little bit more complicated than it would normally be if you're playing these hand attack spells against a combo deck.
All right, both players here choosing to keep their opening 6. Jennifer Rose on a strong start into a Spyglass Siren, and this is a staple of the Dimir midrange deck. An amazing turn 1 to give you that map token as well, and a 1/1 flyer. It's just always been good.
I think I had to eat crow when this card came out because I guess I didn't say anything specifically against it, but I would have never in a million years called this to be like the impactful 1-drop that it has been. I think I and maybe some other people kind of underestimated how powerful these map tokens have been in the standard metagame.
It's actually one of the few things that I tend to say, when referencing Get Lost. It's actually one of the few things that makes Get Lost not a great card. But here comes a consequential Omniscience card. This is Roiling Dragonstorm. This is a Tarkir card, and this is going to be a really big part of Aiden's plan going forward. Roiling Dragonstorm, of course, allowing to draw 2 cards and then discard a card.
Yeah, like this is a deck, the Omniscience deck, that did see significant changes with the release of Tarkir Dragonstorm, and I think this card is half the reason why. Obviously, having ways to discard Omniscience as efficiently as possible is really strong, and being able to recur a draw spell like this, like we've talked before with these combo decks, a lot of the time, the main thing that can get in the way of you winning if you reach your combo point is, do you have enough gas in the tank? And the Dragonstorm has gas for days.
And look at this hand. We've got a Duress from Jennifer Rose here, and this is intimidating to look at. that. We've got a Spell Pierce, 3 stock ups, and a Meringue River Regent. One other card as well. We can't quite see what that is under there.
Yeah, it looks like a white card perhaps by the border, but besides speculating...
Looks like could be an Abuelos.
Yeah, yeah, there's not a lot of white cards in the deck. Perhaps a temporary lockdown. We can only really see the corner of the card. The important thing is those 3 stock ups, right? And even the Meringue River region, if you could somehow take all the stock ups, the region itself is a positive draw spell. So we're kind of seeing the unduressable hand right here, unfortunately, for Jennifer.
Really difficult as well because you can take 1 stock up, still leaves 2 more stock ups. Jennifer Rose choosing to take the Spell Pierce as well. And this kind of indicates the position that she's in. She does not want to be interrupted in her game plan currently.
I mean, I really like that decision. It shows a great understanding. It's not just the sake of, well, why take 1 stock up when you leave 2 in the hand? But if you see your opponent is on all of these 3 and 4 mana spells that are going to really pull them ahead at that window in the game, and you have interaction for that temporary lockdown that we saw the corner of, then all you need to do is make sure they don't have the Spell Pierce, and you've kind of starved Aiden of early game relevant cards.
This is the one of Phantom Interference in Jennifer Rose's deck, and we were just speaking earlier before we came online about the prevalence of one-ofs in this open deck list format and the ability to kind of catch your opponent off guard with these, here and there one-of cards, not kind of knowing what to predict. You maybe put yourself a little bit off tempo, but overall you're putting yourself in a position to display a wide variety of threats. And this one-of Phantom Interference coming in really handy in the face of that temporary lockdown. Aiden Gordon now firing off one of those many stock-ups, probably going to look for some land here. Looks like there might be another Meringue River region in those cards revealed, as well as a Moment of Truth.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is what a lot of stock-ups look like when you're in Azorius Omniscience. We've obviously seen plenty of stock-ups resolved today already in the feature match area, but they kind of have a different texture based on what deck you're playing. When you see stock-up cast by Izzet Prowess, that basically represents 6 or more damage that they're picking up into their hand. It's very hard for them to miss on action cards, but there's not a lot of action in Aiden's deck. It's a lot of these just cards that draw more cards because you really need to sculpt that hand, and you're kind of relying on a few pieces of interaction to fall over the line because that combo does so reliably end the game once you reach it. But if Jennifer can keep hanging on to those couple of pieces of relevant counterspell type interaction, as we saw with that one of Phantom Interference, then Aiden has to, take some pause perhaps when going for the combo. And in the meantime, his life total is starting to dwindle.
The important cards that Jennifer Rose is going to look for in this game 1 are going to be, well, we've already seen that Phantom Interference, and the rest is going to be Spell Pierce and Tishana's Tidebinder. Not too much other disruption coming from Jennifer Rose's side.
Speaking of disruption, though, I do have to take note, Aiden in the land area there has a Blast Zone on 1 counter. Could that potentially help salvage this game here for him?
Could do pretty well. The only thing it currently hits is the Spyglass Siren, not really the most exciting option for Aiden at this moment. We're going to animate the Soulstone Sanctuary. Looks like Jennifer Rose, more than anything else, is pushing aggressively right now. Knows that Aiden is in a bit of a bind, hasn't been able to put an Omniscience into the graveyard, hasn't either been able to put any creatures on board. Down to 7 already facing Jennifer Rose's 21. I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. Like, we saw before in the earlier mid-range matchups that we've covered today, a lot of grindy stuff where you have to kind of pick the axis your opponent appears to be weakest on and try and make the game about that. And Aiden clearly isn't lacking in card advantage, especially over time as he resolves these stock-ups. But right now, with no clear way to affect the board and that one temporary lockdown seen off by the counterspell, there's a real window here for Jennifer to just crush game 1 before Aiden can even do anything.
Staring down 6 damage as well with that 3-3 and that 2-1 and a 1-1. This is a precarious position to be in, firing off another stock up.
I don't think, has Aiden made a land drop for this turn? So it could be live to draw land and interaction, but there's no interaction in that pile of cards. So Aiden does have, for instance, the one of Soul Partition. There are some options available, but yeah, you're kind of limited in what you can go for, and it has to pick up the cards.
Moving straight swiftly into game 2. Bit of a kind of stunted start for Azorius Omniscience. Of course, Aiden having some difficulties first finding that 3rd land drop. So how are we heading into sideboarding now?
I feel like in Aiden's seat, you kind of don't feel that loss so badly because you can say to yourself, well, I got stiffed a little bit on my draws. Those stock-ups were meant to hit something bigger. But at the same time, you have kind of registered a deck full of more stock-ups and more card draw. And I'm just really impressed by Jennifer. That's the kind of killer instinct you need to have to get this far on a mid-range deck, right? Your game plan is not laid out for you at the start of each match. I'm the aggro player. I have to get in by turn 4. You have to play each match differently. And even within the matchup itself, if you see your opponent's hand as stock-up, stock-up, stock-up region, you're like, I have to beat down now. I am pushing damage, I think.
I'll be honest with you as well. I'm actually kind of happy to see that in my opponent's hand as well, because it means several turns of limited action, if anything, from my opponent. And it allows allows me to put myself, even though I'm a more mid-range player, if I'm Jennifer Rose, puts me in a position to push a bit more damage and to be a bit more aggressive, because at best, Aiden's going to throw down a stock up on turn 3. Still means that I've got a Spyglass Siren, still means I've got a Flood Pits Drowner. Really advantageous position to be in.
Yeah, you make a great point. If my opponent's hand, when I duress them, already has 2 stock ups, I'd rather they have a 3rd redundant stock up than Soul Partition or something.
Looking at the sideboards here, I'll be honest with you, considering this isn't a matchup that we see too often, I'm a bit of a loss. Obviously, Jennifer Rose is going to look to bring in those 2 Ghost Vacuums to, as always, similar with Jeskai Oculus, you're going to look to take those Omnisciences straight out of the graveyard.
Yeah, this is something where I'm going to defer to your expertise, because how to attack the Omniscience combo deck is something I've been thinking about actually all day. It's a really interesting deck to me. And there's the question of, do you try and focus on just the combo pieces? How do I take out the graveyard? Obviously, Ghost Vacuum seems tailor-made for this, but beyond that, do you try and slow down the early game phase, as Jennifer was just so successful in doing, or do you try and make the combo harder to resolve?
I think I'd make the combo as hard to resolve as possible. The interesting thing with Aiden's deck here is you get 1 chance to cast 1 spell. If you successfully Abuela's Awakening your Omniscience onto the battlefield on that turn 4 curve that you're so hoping for, you need to have another Omniscience in hand to really get the ball rolling. You get 1 chance to fire off 1 spell before your opponent has a chance to respond. And Jennifer Rose, being the demure mid-range player here, has a lot of answers to a 1/1 spirit creature, which is what that Omniscience comes back as, thanks to Abuela's Awakening.
Yeah, it is really interesting to me. I mean, there are some counterspells here in Aiden's deck, in the main deck, in Confounding Riddle, and there's a couple of Spell Pierces, but I've seen a lot of these lists running at least 1 piece of hard counter magic like Refute, because that way you get an extra chance often with the Omniscience. If your opponent sees your first spell and it's not that second copy and the removal spell on the Omniscience because Abuela's Awakening makes it a creature and thus vulnerable, then you counterspell that, then you do whatever you want. But here, yeah, you're right, playing within a finer margin, although you could bring in something like Voice of Victory from the side to limit those counter combo options at the point of attack.
Voice of Victory is the kind of card that I tend to say is a card that gets a removal spell out of your opponent's hand. It's I play Voice of Victory and you discard a removal spell. It's a card that is going to be, Jennifer Rose is inclined to remove it. Jennifer wants to be making moves on Aiden's turn to put him in a difficult position to interact with. Aiden is largely only interacting on his turn. It's an axis of kind of singularity in that way. He's only really looking to make moves on his turn. Voice of Victory makes it possible for him to move unimpeded.
Yeah, exactly. When you're so one-dimensional and limited in when you're, like, timing sense, you can go for your combo. Having a card like this that kind of levels that playing field and limits your opponent is essential. And as you said, it almost puts a gun to your head and forces, as Jennifer, you to make a removal play on it. But compared to a lot of combo-based lists, getting removal spells out of your opponent's hand is actually pretty relevant here, because, again, you have this weird interaction where your Omniscience is this fragile little 1/1 creature after it's reanimated.
The difficult thing, of course, for Aiden staring down Jennifer Rose's deck is she is not lacking for removal in any way. There's a lot of hand disruption in Deep Cavern Bat and Duress. There's Anoint with Affliction, Cut Down, Go for the Throat. There's a lot of answers. This Tishana's Tidebinder as well could end up being really consequential to shutting down those abilities.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have all these cards that are very good at targeting creatures, because, of course, there's a lot of creature decks in the meta, which Jennifer has had to survive to get to this matchup. But, again, that's where it's like, how do you attack this Omniscience combo deck? There's lots of different ways to approach it, and none of them are so convincing. I don't know if I would want to be, especially going up on creature removal spells, just to try and pick off that Omniscience. And I do think that maybe we'll see some more of the blue counter magic and the Ghost Vacuum sided in. But I am not, a 5/1 player at the top table, and who knows what kind of unconventional approach might be used to full Aiden here in games 2 and 3.
Looks like players are shuffling up now, getting ready for game 2. Jennifer Rose leads 1-0 in this round 7 of the Melbourne RC Series 9.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about what Jennifer Rose might have sideboarded there, because players they spent a long time thinking about their options. Other than the Voice of Victory, is there anything you see out of this Azorius deck that might feature here in game 2?
I would imagine, depending on how aggressive of a slant Jennifer Rose is pushing, I'd be inclined to put Beza in just to mitigate a little bit of that life loss, potentially also go up on card advantage. It depends on the position that you see yourself being in. Something that Aiden was sorely lacking in this last game was creatures.
Yeah.
He was dying to, unfortunately, a Soulstone Sanctuary, a Flood Pitch Drowner, and a Spyglass Siren. That's not exactly the most aggressive lineup of creatures we've seen today, but that's exactly what beat him down, was just having absolutely no board presence.
It's such a classic black mid-range thing that, like, if you cripple your opponent enough, then it doesn't really matter what you're hitting them with. But the Azorius deck, I wouldn't call it a transformational sideboard plan. There's 2 Beza, 2 Clarion Conqueror, 2 Overlord of the Mistmores. If you start bringing in more and more of these creatures, you kind of just have a pretty solid curve of bodies. And when your opponent's attacking with random 2/1s and 1/1s, you're going to need those map tokens to get through.
Beza also fantastic at blocking. That is a big 4/5.
Such a sturdy elk. And I mean, we're seeing the players now that kind of had their hands. We saw, you know, the mulligans may have been effectual in that first game. Jennifer, considering this one, it looks like. Is that a main deck Fairy Mastermind, or are those all it? So some of them have come in from the sideboard, it seems like. An interesting card. I'm not sure I would have gone for it in this matchup. How many actual draw spells does the Azorius deck have?
I actually think this is really not a bad play. I think between the, what are they, the Roiling Dragon Storms, you're actually putting a fair amount of card draw. And even if you're casting the Omen side of Meringue River region, you're pretty confidently capitalizing off of that extra card draw.
Yeah, I'll clarify. I wasn't going to criticize. I was going to say I also like this, but for the lesser half of the card, usually the Fairy Mastermind, I just like getting a 2/1 flash flyer.
Also very good in this position. Again, I think Jennifer Rose capitalizing on board presence is really going to be the make or break in this matchup. Jennifer Rose has taken a mulligan here, so didn't like what she saw, Fairy Masterminds included. Also looks like we saw a Deep Cavern Bat in that hand, but not good enough for her purposes here.
I wonder if it was just like you sort of size up the bodies in your hand again and go, I need a faster clock than this. I need to see a Preacher of the Schism, or I need to see something really high-end like the Sheoldred in the deck, or the 4 Enduring Curiosities. That I've seen this deck called Dimir Curiosity sometime. We saw none of that, none of Kaido in game 1. It was kind of impressive that Jennifer got the job done without these heavy hitters. But do you think those cards will have an impact, or even still in the deck?
I really have always been a fan of Enduring Curiosity in this deck. It provides, again, more advantage that the deck sometimes seems to lack and stutter on. We have resolved our mulligans. Aiden throwing down Meticulous Archive, has surveilled, kept on tight, likes what he sees.
Yeah, I mean, you love that Surveyor Land turn 1. And again, these first few turns are so critical. We're going to get a look at Aiden's hand here. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for landing that Dreams of Steel and Oil. This is an interesting card here because I feel like it quite often misses against this Omniscience deck, and I wasn't sure it would stay in, but perhaps just getting the information itself is valuable enough, especially in this kind of matchup where you have to really know where your opponent's at progressing their combo.
Well, and look, Jennifer Rose going to completely miss on that Dreams of Steel and Oil, and this is exactly a position where Duress actually is better than Dreams of Steel and Oil.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of reason that these black decks have to play a split. If you just had Thoughtseize, that would obviously be a very powerful standard card. So instead, we're going to make you miss some percentage of the time. But at least now you can, you know, we see that again, Spectral Interference in hand. Now you know, do I have to save this to potentially stop the combo on turn 4? Maybe right now. And here is the Deep Cavern Bat coming down to potentially take a second bite out of that hand. The Voice of Victory is in there. There's also a removal spell, or at least a bounce spell for the Bat. Not ideal, but you can get access to whatever's under the Bat now.
We've got the Afara's Dispersal as well as 2 Spell Pierces, so Aiden really working hard to protect his combo now.
Yeah, protecting the combo, and also, at least with that Afara's Dispersal, protecting his life, which is a card he seemingly just whiffed on in early game, despite having 3 main deck. Must be reassuring to have some kind of defense in hand and get the voice down now.
Voice down now, shutting off for the time being Jennifer Rose's ability to interact on Aiden's turn.
So, as Jennifer, obviously we talked about, you really are tempted to remove this card as soon as possible, but can you afford to wait up? Seemingly you can. Jennifer, absolutely confident in developing the board. For now, doesn't mind giving Aiden sort of his turn to himself.
Additionally, as well, made the decision not to attack with the Deep Cavern Bat, likely not wanting to trigger the Afara's Dispersal because it would give Aiden access to that Get Lost again. So a really calculated move from Jennifer Rose on her part. Now back to Aiden, tapping 2 here for another Roiling Dragonstorm. This Azorius Omniscience deck is able to dig and refine so cleanly and so efficiently, and that's even without Omniscience on the board.
Yeah, even the Dispersal, as you mentioned, which we'll bring up here because it's not the most universally played card, but even this helps you dig further. It's such an ideal card for this deck, which is mainly just concerned with how long you can stay alive to set up the combo, but it's another way to get Omniscience in the graveyard, which we now see the key card in the key place. Omniscience is now a viable target, and we haven't found, at least that we've seen, the Awakening yet, but that is half the combo prepared.
really good position for Aiden right now. Jennifer Rose probably having to make some really difficult decisions as well. We saw that Phantom Interference as well, and that is now a non-viable card for Jennifer Rose to cast during Aiden's turn. She can't cast spells during his turn at all. And so having to decide, that is going to be a counterspell to proactively protect herself. If Aiden comes after anything of Jennifer's, there's a chance for her to use a counterspell to protect her things. Aiden, probably likely expecting this, is going to play a bit more hedging his bets, wants to play his spells on his turn so that Jennifer Rose can't.
And you mentioned last game, even though Jennifer did get the job done and quite convincingly, the bodies in this Dimir deck are not as aggressively statted as in some other decks we've seen today. And so when you're in this spot where you can't really threaten the interaction on Aiden's turn to stop the combo, you are forced to get aggressive. And at some point you have to walk into the Sapphire's Dispersal. Like, I wasn't going to criticize the play earlier because it's, you can't really do anything about it, but there's no way that Aiden's missing that chance, especially to bounce away an expensive creature like Preacher of the Schism and now get to look at the top of the deck.
We saw off of this is a Surveil 2 right now. There is a Beza on top of there, which is really good for Aiden. Not going to give him any extra bodies right now, but and actually no life either at the minute.
It's never a bad card, right? Especially in this matchup where the long game seems to at this spot favor you, but you kind of have a window here as Aiden until Jennifer finds removal for that voice, right? Because I don't think any of the cards Jennifer appears to be holding deal with it, and that's why it's sticking around right now. I'm sure Aiden is just really hoping to find an awakening as soon as possible and kind of get through this game too quickly if he can steal one.
You can see as well, Jennifer's got, I think it's another Dark Slick Shores in hand, but hasn't yet played the extra land. Going to activate the map, one of the map tokens on the Spyglass Siren. Going to go ahead. It has a Go for the Throat, I believe, which is going to take care of the Voice of Victory.
Yeah, it looks like
the next turn.
The Warhammer 40k printing perhaps there, like just from the silvery look of it, but that's a relief to see on top. But what will Aiden do now? Like, again, we talked about you have this real temporary window of advantage here. It's been interesting to see how Jennifer's played around it and might be playing out of it now. But, I mean, Aiden is essentially one hair's breadth away from ending the game at any time.
I still don't think we've seen that Abuelo's off of the top, which means Jennifer Rose is safe for now, but that could change at a moment's notice. Just again, given how much refinement and card draw is available to Aiden, puts him in a really good position. Not yet having made any impact though, and it looks like attack in.
Wow.
With the Voice of Victory.
I would not have this on my bingo card for this matchup, but here we go, Voice of Victory.
Voice of Victory in Mobilize 2. We're going to get 2 tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. This also, I actually don't dislike this, given that...
I mean, I'm looking around for like a split up here. I'm trying to figure out what's happening.
I'm wondering exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Gonna put the Spyglass Siren and the Vampire token in front of the Voice of Victory to get rid of it for good, or good for now.
It's so rare that you see, in a situation like that, a player offer a trade and another player take the trade, because it feels like it means both players think they got one over on each other. And Aiden, I guess this is what it was leading to here. Now there are flyers.
Now we have Overlord of the Mist Moors impending, giving us 2/1/1 flying insect creature tokens. This is pretty good for Aiden, all things considered. Able to favorably block the Deep Cavern Bat, not as much on the Spyglass Iron, still a 2/2, which would fold to an insect token. That's a pretty good turn for Aiden there.
Yeah, I mean, Overlord of the Mist Moors, we were speculating. I wasn't sure if it would come in, but as you said, it seemed like the biggest problem for Aiden in game one, arguably, was just not being able to block all the little bodies out of the Dimir deck and the life getting bled away over a couple of turns. This is a solid couple of blockers right here. So, and especially producing multiple bodies with that removal spell on top of deck must be reassuring. And there's also the time threat, right? We're worried about the Omniscience combo this whole time, going over and over it, but just an Overlord of the Mist Moors on the battlefield is at least demanding an answer.
Jennifer Rose passing, no combat on her turn, 4 mana open. We can see an Enduring Curiosity as well as the Go for the Throat and still the Spectral Interference that we're aware of. So it looks like she's again playing into that mid-range element, setting up for the long game here.
I mean, if you ignore what was happening previously in the game and on the other side of the field, I'd argue this is the ideal spot for the Dimir Curiosity, Dimir mid-range deck, right? Is 4 mana holding up either multiple interactive spells on your turn or this Curious Cat, which has done so much work so far in Standard.
Yes, we flashed in the Enduring Curiosity on Aiden's end step. Aiden also as well, holding steady, keeping all mana open and available to him right now. We've got that Go for the Throat live. Looks like it's going to go after an insect token. Looks like Jennifer Rose is wanting to capitalize on the Enduring Curiosity's passive ability to, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card.
Yeah, I said the earlier trade was interesting because it sort of, I guess, seemingly implied that maybe the players had different priorities, but you can see the priorities very much aligned here. Aiden plays the Overlord, wants to make blockers, wants to stop combat damage coming through, plus any other effects. And now Jennifer, willing to throw away premium removal spells in order to get through combat damage. And now that Curiosity is in play, the associated card draw. Really full grip. And now that voice is gone, all those cards in hand that earlier were kind of just sitting around not doing much are unlocked, and Jennifer seems to be in a much better position.
We're again looking at the same situation that we saw in game one. Aiden, empty board, Jennifer Rose with a stacked board of really good, really effective creatures. And here comes, I take it all back.
But
I take it all back.
This land, right? Because there's that Spectral Inference that's been in hand the whole game, was locked away by that Voice of Victory. We were talking about its relevance to the combo, but if you can stop this Wrath from happening, I suppose...
Here we go.
You don't mind, well, exactly. I guess this is the power of Enduring Curiosity, is that you don't even really much mind that.
Well, and what I'm looking at as well is Aiden's threatening a Spell Pierce with that one untapped blue. He's going to Day of Judgment and say, if you want to counter it, I'll counter your counter.
Is the reluctance to find that counterspell kind of a consequence of Jennifer? Jennifer's deck, for the record, is quite counterspell-light compared to at least what it could have. I guess there's now the potential for a second Phantom Interference out of the side, but there's not a large supply of counter magic. And so while I might normally say if you're going to lose a counterspell war, losing it over a Wrath is better than losing it over Omniscience, you maybe just don't have enough bullets to lose a war at all.
Well, look at this. Here comes another Duress from Jennifer Rose, getting a good peek at that hand, and we've got Spell Pierce, Get Lost, Bays of the Bounding Spring, and that Meringue River Regent. Once we're able to get that Regent down, we're going to pick up both of those Dragon Storms, but that's a bit of a ways off for Aiden right now. Difficult decision for Jennifer Rose here. What are you looking at in this position?
Well, the Spell Pierce was there. It was not a bluff. So Jennifer playing around that expertly until now we can resolve the Duress, but I agree with taking the Get Lost, because especially now that you've seen the Spell Pierce, you can continue to play around it in most situations. You're not trying to land spells that are as expensive as Aiden is with, especially Willow's Awakening at 4, all these Wraths, and you now know you have a window, because as you said, that Regent, when you're not casting it for free off Omniscience, kind of a pricey card to put in play as a creature, and we can see Kaido on top. That's some great action for this blue-black deck in this position.
Really wonderful. Probably, I'll be honest, not information I want my opponent to have in that moment, but information he's going to get regardless. Aiden Gordon now having to make some pensive choices here, because that's probably a Kaito next turn at minimum, and that's going to be even more card draw for Jennifer Rose. Not to mention having the draw from the Enduring Curiosity. Really smartly, she took the Get Lost as well, because that could have hit the Enduring Curiosity, even though it, we had the Day of Judgment, destroys the creature side, endures, and comes back as an enchantment. Yep. And Beza time.
Yeah, so we're seeing this is kind of the plan, I guess, that we speculated Aiden might go to. And it's hard to say right now whether it's like game winning, but it's at least game prolonging, right? These multiple kind of hefty white threats that generate blockers. Beza didn't generate extra blockers there, but even just something that will soak up a removal spell or trade for a Preacher.
Now, here's an interesting thing here. We have a Go for the Throat on the stack. Aiden knows the Kaito is in hand, can Spell Pierce and say, do you want to destroy this or do you want to ninjutsu this turn? And that's a really interesting decision that Jennifer Rose gets to make, and she decides, I'd like to pay, was that 4 for my Go for the Throat?
Yeah, and it's a weird way to use a Spell Pierce, but in the position Aiden's in, I think that you have no other choice, right? This is arguably the most value you're going to get. At least it disrupts your opponent's play somewhat.
Really interesting back and forth being traded here. This is definitely kind of more what we were expecting from this matchup as opposed to game one.
How scared of you, obviously it depends massively on the situation, but Enduring Curiosity puts such pressure on your opponent psychologically. The idea that any damage connecting, it isn't just, the 1s and 2s that we were seeing add up before. Oh.
Here's the Abuelo's Awakening.
Never mind all that.
Here's the important thing. Spectral Interference fired off. Do we have another Spell Pierce? We don't. That is a clean counter of the Abuelo's Awakening. Really, really good for Jennifer Rose. Not something that Aiden wanted to see. Maybe potentially thinking that he shouldn't have played that counter spell war with the Spell Pierce the turn before.
Yeah, well, Aiden crucially tried to hold off the Spell Pierce, right? It was prepared for this situation. I think both players have really showed some mastery here, or at least known what they wanted to do. But Jennifer has just been able to, with the tools available, outmaneuver and out-sequence what Aiden's been able to do. Perhaps just the Azorius deck not quite as fast on its feet, and that Duress hitting home on that, revealing the Spell Pierce, making it devalued in Aiden's mind. I said, maybe this is the most value you can get for it, but I guess Jennifer wouldn't have made that same play if the Spell Pierce were available, but Aiden must...
Really cool choice here as well to hard cast the Kaito, stun the Beza, get in, draw 2 extra cards, and then Meringue River Regent.
I guess we have hit that point.
Casting.
Yeah, we're up to this requisite number of lands here. We're ready to put the Laurel Wreath around Jennifer's head, but this is 2 bounces. Is there a way where you hit your own Beza for the replay value? Because you would get additional bodies here now if you leave the creatures around.
I think I would. I think I would pick up the Beza. The only problem really is that that's a lot of mana to sink into, and that 4 mana slot is usually reserved for Abuelo's Awakening. So it's a big concession to say that you'd rather play the Beza. And we're going to have Jennifer Rose pick up the Preacher and get rid of that Vampire token. Not as worried about the Kaito in this position. And we're going to stun again. Jennifer Rose playing a stunning deck, if I do say so myself.
And making some stunning plays as well. I'm struggling to keep up here, but Jennifer is not. It feels like Jennifer has been, to say nothing of Aiden's play, this is not a comparison between the two, but Jennifer has moved so confidently through this match. And we've seen cards that have been in hand the whole game, these tools that are already kind of obtuse, right? It's just a stun counter. It won't get you out of any situation, but the right tool for the right job is what I'm seeing out of this Dimir deck right now. And a window has been prized open once again where Aiden can only kind of sit there with arms crossed stoically and kind of hope to squeeze through as creatures come in for damage and cards on Jennifer's side.
Really difficult position. We've also chosen to plus Kaito this round, which is going to grant that emblem that ninjas you control get +1/+1. The damage is just going to start stacking up. And even this time around, even when Aiden has creatures on the battlefield, they're now stunned and can't block. And we're in the same position as last time. Aiden down to 8 life versus Jennifer Rose's 17. This is tricky.
Yeah, I think Aiden was kind of forced to make the play last turn and try and reset the creatures from Jennifer just because that guarantees a reduction in how much damage, how much attacks are coming through. But you're in a spot now where, okay, you picked up the Dragon Storm, so you can dig a bit deeper into your deck thanks to Meringue River Regent, but you don't have a clear way to gain life, and that, you know, your supply of that is rapidly diminishing. The second region?
I thought I saw that straight off the top. This is actually, I would say, a really big deal. And Tidebinder.
I mean, you knew it was in the deck, right? Only a couple in the main, but you don't have many other targets for it. So by this point in the game, all those extra cards you've drawn off the Curiosity and the Kaito, it's looking really good for Jennifer here.
Look, I will say, if nothing else, that Meringue River Regent is still a flying 6/7.
Well, it's not a flyer, right?
The Meringue River, it's not a flying.
Yeah, and the handshake is there. Yeah, too many attackers.
Goodness, too many attackers yet again. Jennifer Rose going 6-1. What a game.
That was amazing to watch. I mean, I feel kind of bad for Aiden there. He's shaking his head. He looks... I mean, you'd obviously be shaken up, taking a loss. These players, as I remind you, are at X1 already. So that loss, I believe, has maybe eliminated Aiden from contention for at least top 8 here. Obviously, we have prizes going down a ways after that. And you can see the players kind of commiserating now over what was a very hard-fought and intense match between these two blue decks. I think we'll talk more about it back at the table.
I'm jittery. I'm so jittery. What an absolutely amazing 2 games.
Yeah, you love to see a match like that finish up even 2-0, where the players are just, they're completely still in the match, discussing it out. Here was my line, I thought this, then you had that. Were you holding that the whole time? Like, I mean, Jennifer at least got to see Aiden's hand at various points through the game, an advantage of being a black deck. Aiden had to just guess the whole time, and Jennifer just looked like, mate, you couldn't have drawn the cards up better. It was amazing.
Look, and unfortunately that counterspell war did, I think that's really what led to the end of that match. That counterspell war, that consequential spell Pierce using to fight over the Go for the Throat, and unfortunately really could have been used to save the Abuela's Awakening.
It's real. I mean, I'm defending my own reasoning here as well, because I said I backed the play at the time, which maybe is why I'm not up there. But it's tough in that moment to say, no, you have to hold the spell Pierce to block that sequence next turn. At most, if you hold it, it just kind of prolongs the period before that fight happens. But Aiden was never like playing land drops freely, right? So throughout the game, even though, you know, it went very long, that spell Pierce and the Spectral Interference remained a threat to those key spells.
Jennifer Rose in an absolutely commanding position that whole entire game. Really well done. That is us for round 7. We'll be heading into round 8 in just a moment.